Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters, and I'm checking. Yep.
Is it on? I'm glad it wasn't on before because I did something you're not supposed to do on public access.
There we go.
We're talking about the national elections.
That kind of gets us all going here. I will only sort of say, who's going after Biden? Who's the guy? That's what I want to know.
I'm glad that the Bernies are fighting the betas and all those people.
I know.
You know what?
But in the end, I think
Hillary's laughing.
The end result of all of this is that you end up with a bunch of Democratic candidates eating each other alive.
I know.
And doing everything they can to help reelect the guy who shouldn't be reelected.
One of the best people in the world could have been our president.
Absolutely true.
I'm sorry, I'm a little
Absolutely
partial.
True. Yeah.
Now, you were for her in 2008, I remember.
I was a Hillary Clinton supporter.
But you didn't, I remember you going with your jacket and showing me your button on a walk once.
Right. What I got to say about this is I know people, who have dealt with Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, whatever, who have real reservations, and I respect that. I said that's cool, but
part of the machine.
But I always said it. Honestly, if we had somebody like Hillary Clinton as president, would send such a message to the world.
Oh my God!
And it would have been just great. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Hillary.
no, it's a great loss. But anyway, so speaking more locally now.
Oh yeah, let's go to local politics. I'm so excited about this election year.
I'm not.
I'm being very sarcastic.
All right. Because right now we've got, as far as we all know locally, I think it's about 20. But it's unsure because I'm including
20?
some people.
Wait, locally?
All right.
Where do you get 20?
Well, all right. So here's what I'll say.
9 incumbents.
Here's what I'll say to that.
Okay.
So we have 9 incumbents. Let's begin with the presumption that all 9 of them are going to seek re-election.
Right.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, I know of at least a few who have talked more privately about not wanting to run anymore in the past, but they always came back and did it. Right. So, but let's start with that 9. Okay. Then there's one definite from last time around, which is Adrian Musgrave.
Right.
So that brings us to 10.
Charles Franklin.
There are now 4. At least 4 brand new candidates.
Right. Oh, brand new. Right.
Yeah. I'll tell you them because there was a new one as of today.
Okay.
All right.
So we got.
So it's Charles Franklin.
Right.
Right. So he entered the race, by entered the race by my definition is when you fill out the paperwork with the state that allows you to raise money.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
So to me that means I'm doing this. Right.
Yeah.
So for Charles Franklin, March 5th. Then there was, and there were some of the candidates that I've got on my list who were candidates 2 years ago who I think would be running again, but I don't know for sure. All right, so then there was a fellow named Yvonne Sabrina Wheeler, who became a new candidate on March 12th. Nicola Williams.
No, she's a known person.
She organized the Caribbean Festival.
Right.
New candidate on March 12th.
Okay.
And then as of today, there's a new candidate named Ben Simon who lives on Bishop Allen Drive. New candidate as of April 2nd, 2019.
That's today.
That is today.
Wow.
Right? I mean, it's one of my little habits. Before I come here to go do the show, I go check the site to see that. I mean, I also am keeping track of
who he is.
I wasn't sure, but the name sounded familiar, so I did a little searching. And
so easy to do now.
It is pretty easy to do.
Even for you.
But the thing is, if you have a name like Ben Simon, that's relatively common name. So
True.
There are probably some Ben Simon who was prime minister of somewhere.
Right. Well, you could say Ben Simon Cambridge.
Right. Well, that's what I do. And then sometimes you have to look a little bit more. Yeah. But the thing is, if somebody's going to be a candidate, there's also a better and even chance that they have spoken at some city council meeting, or spoke at a committee meeting on a particular topic. So if you go poking around, you tend to discover what they're about in Cambridge as well. Okay.
Okay. And what did you discover?
So some of these candidates, these new emerging candidates, you sort of see have spoken up as part of the bike lobby.
True.
Right. I'm a little unsure about Charles Franklin, really where he's coming from.
Well, he's part of Upgrade Cambridge, so I know he's
okay. So that's a tech
Broadway.
guy. I think he works for Akamai or something like that down Kendall.
Sense. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's interesting.
So
that makes him an interesting candidate. Honestly, it wouldn't hurt to have a couple more kind of tech savvy people to understand some of these issues. He spoke in favor of the affordable housing overlay, but he offered sort of a variant of his own,
What was it?
I don't actually know, but I think he wanted to do things in different zones. But the thing about new candidates is you can say whatever the hell you want.
True.
And one of the things you really want to do if you're a new candidate and you think you're kind of a smart guy, you like to sort of promote something that you think of as sort of innovative sounding. I mean, when I was a candidate 20-something years ago, I proposed a different way of thinking about rent control, right? Like a gradated system, so that if you had smaller buildings, you would be less faced with the onerous regulations, and the bigger you got, the
in
more,
other words, that was why the small property owners got
right. I was trying to accommodate the small property owners. Of course, let me tell you the way this really works, which is that if you suggest a reform, right, then the people who wanted to abolish rent control will hate you. And if you're a person who wants to simply defend everything that was true of rent control, and you suggest a reform, they hate you. Yeah. But I was being honest, and I mean, I did okay, all things considered. But the thing is, it's not easy to propose a middle ground in a city where, just like the country, people are starting to take sides.
So how soon after that did rent control go on a referendum?
I was a candidate in 1993. Question 9 came in 1994, and it was gone by 1995.
Interesting.
I could say, hey, you should have listened to me.
Yeah. And a few other people.
And honestly, there were some people that I wasn't the only person who suggested modifications. Even in the 1980s, people like Hugh Russell, currently on the planning board, Geneva Malenfant, Karen Swaim, they formed a group called Coalition 85 that actually tried to make some suggestions of better ways to do things. But the thing is, people were taking sides.
They were entrenched, and they had their votes. And
I'm really a little worried about this city right now because
we're mimicking kind of the country in a way.
For a
different, but
in ways. But the thing is when I look at it and say, well, who are the new candidates that are emerging? So I sort of look around and figure out, and I sort of say, well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say this about Nicola Williams, right? I think she strikes me as the sort of more of the a bit more acquired wisdom than some of the others. But some of these other ones here are all sort of hanging with the Our Revolution crowd. They are, I'm sure they would be 100% gung-ho for instituting things like rent control and various other things. Of course, that's an issue where if you have a city that's majority renter, politically, I suppose the smart thing to do is say, vote for me. I'll support rent control.
Then they have to be registered to vote and actually go to vote in our system, which isn't always the case.
Right, but that was always a bit of a problem where even if you had a rent control system that had some pretty serious problems, you could easily marshal all the majority renters of the city to continue to support it, even if it was horribly flawed. Right. It is kind of like a tyranny of the majority.
But we could not institute rent control without it going to the state.
No, you cannot, right? And in fact, one of the things, sort of a side issue right now, is that there are proposals being floated by the sort of the Karl Marx wing of the Democratic Party in the state legislature, which wants to reinstitute. Right. Actually, there's one proposal for rent controls. Which it was phrased more as a rent stabilization, meaning we're going to just say you can't raise rents beyond a certain percentage. Right. Well, they kept quoting a law, a recent law that was passed, I think, in Oregon or Washington.
Statewide,
statewide. But basically, it says, well, you can increase no more than about 7% plus inflation.
So it's like 10%.
Right. So honestly, I wouldn't call that a particularly onerous form of rent control.
No, because 10% couldn't be.
So people in Massachusetts, they were saying like, yeah, we should be doing something like that. So then, what did they propose? They said you would be allowed to raise your rents. As something like no more than 3% or rate of inflation, which is ever smallest. So in other words, they were not proposing, and they are not proposing the same system that they did in Oregon, right? They were already trying to make it stricter. Now, if you talked about some sort of stabilization scheme, I would be totally open to that. I mean,
what do you mean by that?
Meaning some sort of limitation on how rapidly you could raise your rents without prescribing your rents. When we had rent control in Cambridge many years ago, the rent control board had to meet and decide what your adjustment would be. You had no say.
It was based on 1967 rents.
Based on 1967 rents.
Insane.
So if you charged very low rent in 1967,
you were screwed if you bought that
and
property later.
And then 30 years later, you're now getting kind of old. You could use the income and the security, but in fact, you basically have kind of an updated version of your 1967 rent, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
Those were some of the really severe problems with that kind of system. There is a proposed bill. They have not yet released the text of it from Mr. Connolly.
I thought that was the one you were talking
about.
No,
there's multiple ones being floated there. And the one that the text has not been released would include things like just cause for evictions and various other things, all with a free local option, meaning any city or town could just adopt them just by a simple majority vote. In a way, though, I mean, there is a sort of role here for constitutional guarantees. If you do own property, and if you basically sort of say, okay, if the majority of people in the city basically want to institute a system that basically terribly restricts you potentially, right? Just because they happen to have a majority, then that does sort of run into a bit of an issue about where do your constitutional rights begin and end, so anyway, I was, to be perfectly honest, I was quite pleased when Governor Baker said that ain't going nowhere. So I'm kind of glad we have him as governor. And again, it's not like I'm opposed. I mean, listen, I'm a person who kept my rents dirt cheap.
Yeah, but that's because you lived in the house and you did that.
Right. So it's not like I'm a person who wants to sort of jack up rents and make a fortune. I think people should stabilize rents, and they shouldn't scare people out of their places to live. And there's one proposal, I think it was on a city council agenda a week ago, that said, well, maybe when new inclusionary units are being built around the city, and they're in a particular part of town, and if there's some people who ended up getting displaced from housing because of bad behavior, that maybe they should be given a preference to be able to relocate into an inclusionary unit relatively close to where they've been living for 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
I heard that, I go, that sounds like, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I think that the city...
There's definitely things that could be done.
Yeah, I mean, I think existing city programs, I mean, if you were going to be generating some of these inclusionary units, and there are existing people who are basically kind of getting squeezed out, then I would put them to the front of the line in a heartbeat.
Especially if they've lived in Cambridge.
Especially if they've been here for a while,
Right.
I mean, the notion that somehow you're going to house the nation is an absurdity from day one. So if you've got people sort of saying, but I want to live in Cambridge, you go, well, let's first take care of the people who are being pushed out.
Well, there's a waiting list for public housing here that's like
but that's one of the great lies.
What?
The thing is that many of those same people are on the Cambridge list, or on Somerville's list, or on Boston's list.
So don't they give preference, though, to Cambridge residents?
They can't really do it in some of them, but they can do it with, there are some provisions for doing that with some, it depends on the project.
So what about the Justice Starts and the homeowners rehab? If they're getting funds from the federal government, they also are subject to that?
I don't know what all the rules are.
Okay.
Right, but I'm just sort of saying as a general principle, I think there is a tremendous logic as economics is playing itself out in a bad way, is to try and take care of the people who are getting harmed by it today.
Of course.
Right?
Yes.
In the same way I feel like when people get older and if they have limited income, I think priority one is make sure you take care of them right away. So I think there is a prioritization that makes some sense. But if somebody says, well, I've always wanted to live in Cambridge because I want to play music and whatever, I'm saying, well, maybe if you had a whole community of folks of a similar mind and you all lived in Medford, or if you lived in Quincy or whatever, you'd build a wonderful community, and then everybody would be knocking the doors down to live in that. That's right.
They're doing it.
Oh yeah.
I guess Medford is where they.
That's right. So I don't accept this notion that just because you want to live in one place, that somehow we ought to just do it for you.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the things that I found most irritating at those overlay meetings is people who basically, sort of millennial folks sort of saying, but this is what I want. Put me a house. Give me a house now. I want it
Stop
now.
it.
I mean, but that's ABC in a nutshell right there.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So anyway, so there's some other interesting things happening around town. You went to that meeting, or the next meeting on the River Street?
Yes, I did.
Reconstruction?
Well, I didn't get there because we did our show.
That's
Was
right.
it that same night?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got there, and then they were finishing a presentation, because it was for the public, and they had a lot
Yeah.
of displays, and they had a big map. I could see where my house is now on River Street, where my daughter lives, and boy, there were lots of trees, and now, I said, when was this taken? Because those trees are gone, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I left when it went to go up to people and talk, but
it's a
it
long
was
haul,
very
right?
well attended. There's got to be
I'm glad for
100
that.
people
Yeah.
there.
I mean, I think
Wow,
some really
100.
great things can come out of this River Street reconstruction,
Yeah,
up
there's
to
one
and
next
including
week.
Crawford
There's
Plaza.
the working group is next week, and the public can go, but you can't.
By the way, I found out that the engineer
What?
on that project,
Yeah.
I'm not going to name names here, but turns out he grew up in the same town as me, and he was there
Really?
and he moved here around the same time. And we used to hang out at
he's
some of the same places.
So he's probably at the
So
meeting
now I have to
then.
meet him. I got to go
Okay.
meet him. Yeah.
Well, River Street Working Group is next
Yeah,
week
no,
after 6 to 8.
I'll look him up. Yeah, so
okay.
it'd be great. There are some interesting things that are happening around town. Maybe I actually want
Yeah.
to just sort of say something.
Where should we go to? News and events?
Go right there. Okay, and I'm going to pop one here at the very, very top if I can do this right here. All right.
Okay, so where are we
So
looking right
for
here?
those of you who like history, and certainly
yeah,
if you were
that's you.
listening to us last
Yeah.
week, you probably know about
Listen
that.
to you, not me. I was just
Right.
listening.
There's a person I've known for many years named Roger Agopian, who's a videographer, and he has created documentaries about the Armenian community, primarily in Watertown. And he has also, by the way, did a video on the Middlesex Canal too. I might add.
Can we go to the flyer? Is that gonna be visible here?
Yeah, you can pop
Let's
on
see
the
if
flyer.
that
I don't want to
happens.
open up here.
Oh,
All
good.
right. So this
Well,
is the
let's see.
Belmont Historical Society's Destination Watertown, the Armenians of Hood Rubber. Hood Rubber Company was in Watertown, was a major employer, and there are people who came, Armenian people came here in the early part of the century and late 19th century, specifically because they had a job to come to. And it was at Hood Rubber Company. So the thing is there's an amazing history about this, and so this coming Sunday, April 7th, up at the Belmont Memorial Library.
They only have one library, right? Or do they have two?
Yeah.
I know there's
So this is the one that's on
Concord
Concord.
Ave.
This is the one on Concord Avenue.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
So anyway, I would just
Yeah.
if you have an interest in history. I'm going to try. I'm going to try to go to that.
good
If you
for
know the
you.
reason, because
Yeah.
if Roger's there, I'd like to hang
Sure.
out with Rogers.
Anything else on that list?
Yeah, let's sort of scroll down a little bit, just so I'll walk through a few of these particulars here. Okay, so
Okay.
there's been this Foundry, the gift that keeps on taking, that was gifted to the city of
Oh,
Cambridge.
I thought they already appointed that committee. No.
They appointed a committee, but the thing is that there was there's different committees, and I think maybe they're simply seeking more people now to replace other people on this Foundry Advisory Committee. So that the deadline for application, if you have an interest in this, and this is this is sort of a it can be many things for many people, but it's something.
Here's a picture of it down here.
Yeah, some of the things about the space right down here. All right. So anyway,
So you
if you
apply
have an
by
interest,
Friday, April
the
26th. Okay.
so actually, let's scroll down a little more here. We'll just sort of walk through a few of these particular
All right.
things.
Oh.
This is a little one here, but if you got a dog,
Oh boy.
right, and you want to do the vaccination clinic, it's this coming Saturday, April 6th. You can also get a doggy license, which you got to renew every year. And the old ones expired, I believe, on March 31st. So you don't want to be
Yes,
in
it says that,
violation
yeah.
there.
All
Otherwise,
right.
that cute little dog is going to get mad at you.
And now where are we going?
Let's just go down here. We'll just sort of touch on these. So,
Oh, yard
as
waste, yeah.
some of you already
Street
know,
cleaning started
no
already.
parking on the odd side of the street, or your
Right.
car will be tagged and towed.
Right.
Street cleaning. So that actually began very close to
Certain
my
areas,
house.
right, yeah.
As the first Monday. I'm the second Tuesday and Wednesday, so I'll have to worry about that next week.
Yeah.
But that's it's underway. I'm sure some of the new residents have gotten their
Right.
first big shucker.
Yep.
Right, that's coming around here. Yard waste collection has now resumed and will
Right.
continue all the way through mid-December. And for those of you who've been saving up your household hazardous
Yeah, I
waste,
have it in my car. Probably
the
not
household
safest
hazardous
thing. It's at the Volpe, well, the site of the old, yeah.
Yeah,
It's in the parking lot there.
Yeah, it's like it's Monroe Street. So you come in off of 3rd Street, I believe. Anyway, that's also this coming Saturday, April 6th, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Are you going by any chance?
I may go to this one here.
Because I might give you my stuff.
Well, let me find out if I'm going.
Find out if you're going, because I have to go to the recycle
Let's go down
too.
a little more here. We'll just touch on a few of these ones
I
here,
already
just
did
so
the
you know about
household
this.
waste service.
Now,
What's this?
Craig Kelly and others, so they keep talking about different sorts of mobility, whatever. When I think mobility, I think driving, I think bikes, I think cars, and I think pedestrians and whatever. So, but there's all these sort of new versions.
Yeah, Brookline. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, there was a big scene about
one accident.
Already one accident on a scooter.
It's not funny. I mean, they go 50 miles an hour.
I know, but this
no
was
helmets.
But in the parking lot, somebody cut her forehead, right?
The point is, it's ridiculous. You're getting on this thing and it goes and you have no
I have seen
control.
some of these little scooters scooting up Broadway at a real breakneck speed.
And are they going in the bike lane? They're allowed in the bike lane?
They are, well, up to a certain velocity. I think they are absolutely allowed in bike lanes.
They are.
Mopeds up to a certain number of cc's in the engine are allowed in bike lanes and always have been.
Mopeds can go faster than 15 miles.
Most certainly they can, you know. So Craig Kelly, to his credit, has been pointing out that this singular focus on bike lanes here is completely ignoring the sort of the emerging reality of what's really happening.
Yes.
You know, and in fact, you know, pretty soon, don't be surprised if in fact the bike, the percentage of people using bike for commuting actually starts to level off or even drops in favor of all these other kinds of autonomous vehicles,
drones,
scooters. I don't know about drones, right? Maybe that's what's coming.
So they're going to They're going to start a technical advisory group on the future.
Yeah. So to sort of to look into this, and I think it's an interesting topic, and we'll sort of see where it goes. I think right below this we have so that's also.
So you apply to who for that? I guess it's all on your.
I think it goes down a little further. It's you got to this one's soon.
April 12th. That's a week
12th,
from this Friday.
Now, if you scroll down just a little bit more here. We have these are the ones that have been existing for a while. So it's the Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Transit Advisory Committees. They are also looking to replenish their membership. I will.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I will state that so that's also due by April 26th. One of the things I'll say about that, though, is that the sad truth is that if you have a point of view that may not be in perfect alignment with some of the city staff, they may not appoint you, but that's another issue.
Okay.
So
if you want to find out about it, it is on the city website, but I think it's easier to go to Robert's website, R Winters.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things the city's doing.
RW Winters?
Just rwinters.com.
rwinters.com.
But the thing is that there is a sort of a single place where if you're interested in any city boards and commissions, you just click on a particular link. It's on my website, and it'll take you to the place where it'll actually show you the committees that have vacancies. And then you can apply uniformly that way if you wish.
That's a good thing.
You can still just write a letter too, by the way. There's nothing against that, right? I'm going to make a personal appeal though, which is that if you have a point of view, which is not necessarily the party line on anything and everything, and you feel that maybe you could play a role of having a sort of a different point of view on any of these committees here.
You should do it.
You should do that. Don't be dissuaded just by the fact that that everybody's got to align. I mean, honestly, when I was on the recycling advisory committee, when we were on it, I often would speak up for when somebody says we want to implement this because wouldn't this be great? I would say, well, I don't know. Is that really great? How is a person going to feel about these things? You do have an obligation, I think, as a good citizen to represent all the citizens and not
even
necessarily
there,
be
sometimes you were shut out because again, it was an advisory committee.
That's fine.
I remember for years, Adam Mitchell and myself were saying we need pay-as-you-throw or some form of that. And they didn't want to hear that. They wanted to go straight for the compost.
But I think
which is okay.
The city, these city boards and commissions work best when in fact there's a wide variety of points of view, which are all being heard and not shut out, like in Vision Cambridge, where you just get shut out.
Wow.
All right. But so anyway, so those are some things that are coming up here. So we did talk about the candidates, the new candidates, a little bit. I don't know
There's
that.
a lot of hearings. There was one.
Oh yeah.
Today.
Maybe we should actually go to
tomorrow.
the calendar at the very end here. Just touch upon these. Though we can actually just sort of say.
You can talk for a minute, and I'll find the calendar.
Yeah. So we can sort of say some of these ones right here. So as is typical, we have city council meetings definitely coming up.
Yeah. But here
we
you
just
go.
had one.
There was one today. There was an ordinance.
There was an ordinance committee that we talking about accessory.
I think that was
latest
televised.
version.
I think some of these are
Yes,
televised.
actually, they're putting in more and more requests to televise them
Which
all.
they should be, because
Yeah.
you can't get to these.
Yeah,
all.
I mean, you can almost
could go
assume
to this
that.
if you want. We could talk
Yeah.
about them as we see.
Right. So tomorrow afternoon is a one on the taxi cab
Transportation.
drivers
Oh,
put in a
right,
petition
yeah.
to the council saying, listen, we're getting
Yeah.
beat up by Uber
Yeah.
and Lyft,
Yeah.
what's up, So they're basically having a hearing to address their petition.
And that's gonna be
That's tomorrow at 1 p.m. I'm sure the cab people impact the meeting, and
Yeah, but no, 1 p.m. I don't think that
it's
one
not the
is
best time,
televised. Yeah.
honestly. It's not the
But
best
it's
time.
TNC.
Right, there's also
5:30. There's another one.
on the ordinance committee on the CART petition, so this is
Yeah.
about the Cambridge Head Galleria, which I think
Oh,
is
yeah.
potentially a very interesting project.
Yes.
And, I think if people have good things to say, Dennis Carlone was involved in the design of that whole
right.
gallery years ago. So honestly, he's exactly the right person we want to have in a position to
How
be
does
sort of talking
that
about
relate to the courthouse thing, which I heard has
this. Completely separate.
But I thought the parking issues are similar.
The
No?
thing is the old Sullivan Courthouse, they wanted to use some of the gallery mall parking as
Right.
sort of a part of that.
That's-
But now
so
they're
that's
actually using the city garage, which was built to accommodate the courthouse, I might add.
So that's an issue.
So there
too.
is, to
Yeah.
me, there's a certain natural marriage of that parking lot to the courthouse building, because
Yeah.
that's why it was built in the first place.
Yeah.
But now there's a lot of,
The name, yeah,
public,
right.
little, very politicized,
Yeah.
uprising where they say, well, we shouldn't be giving away a public building for that. But most of these decisions
Yeah.
were made, so this
Already,
is so
yeah.
late in the game to be raising
Uh-huh.
this issue. That, it really
Okay.
borders on unfair.
Well, we're getting to the end. There's a lot of other things. You can go to Robert's Cambridge Civic Calendar, or just some
Yeah.
of the candidates have great
And in,
newsletters.
in
too
a
about
future week, we'll
stuff,
talk
yeah.
a little bit about public financing for municipal elections,
Oh.
because the city solicitor
Wait.
had a wonderful
Yes.
letter on that. And so anyway, we'll get to that another day.
And
Okay.
that's
So
another hearing.
anyway, see you then.
Bye-bye.